So every state has some form of estate or inheritance tax, otherwise called, I think I mentioned it, the death tax. Most states have business taxes too, beyond corporate income tax. So states will tax the removal of natural resources such as timber, oil, or states will require various businesses and occupational licenses for businesses to operate. So like I said, I'm sitting in a coffee house right now. I'm sure there's a license that the owner had to get to open this shop and keep it running. So states will also use payroll taxes and require licenses for drivers and motor vehicles. So I have payroll taxes. There are deductions for state tax, state income tax, federal income tax, insurance, SERS, State University Retirement System. That's my retirement fund, if it's still there by the time I retire, which I doubt. Licenses for drivers and motor vehicles. We have to pay through the nose for a sticker every year for our motor vehicles to keep the license plate current. This is a real depressing lecture. Again, I'm sorry. States will receive large amounts of federal grant money, which is nice when you can get it. So we might apply to Uncle Sam for a grant of a certain amount to fix. I remember a year or 2 or 3 ago, there was a bridge in Joliet that was pretty close to collapsing. It was like it was declared structurally unsound, so we might have, I'm not saying that we did because I don't remember, we might have applied to Washington, D.C. for a grant to finance the rebuilding and restructuring of that bridge. So some 42 states run lotteries. Illinois does. State and local governments also make money from public enterprises. So ferries, boats that take you from point A to point B on the water, toll roads and bridges, state-owned liquor stores. You do have to have a liquor license to run a liquor store in Illinois. Many cities will run their own water, electricity, and bus systems. I know Bloomington Normal runs its own bus system. You do have to pay to get on the bus. Water and electricity. I know my town, Lincoln, does. I don't know that they run their own, but they certainly manage it and look out for better deals for all of us. So we've changed providers a couple times at least. Users must, not just us, the Parker family, but the whole city. Users pay fees for public services such as hospitals, airports, parks, sewers, garbage, disposal. So, like I said, I rent. The landlord takes care of that. Sewers, parks. Hospitals, yeah. Just thinking of something I wanted to say, but I lost it. So sources of revenue. So sales tax. Yeah, we're getting about $250 billion from sales tax, the federal government. This is just states in general. This isn't specific to Illinois. Federal government's given us also about $230, it looks like. Insurance trust revenue, about $210. Property tax, same, about $210 maybe. Individual income tax and corporate income tax adds up probably to about, just eyeballing it, about $175 billion. And again, this is not Illinois specific. This is just state and local revenue in general. So state governments, local governments, they'll issue bonds to borrow money for major projects. And most of these state constitutions put limits, very strict limits, on how much governments can borrow. We don't. It's not in the Constitution anyway. State debts total about $900 billion, and local governments owe more than $1 trillion, which I could not even fathom what $1 trillion looks like. But I know, like federally, we're over at this point $21 trillion in debt. Like I said, if they taxed all of us, everyone in the United States, at 100% of our income, we could not dig ourselves out of the hole we've been put into. So, a budget is both a financial and political plan in which the state sets its spending priorities. So every year, every year of his administration, Governor Pritzker has come down to the General Assembly and delivered a State of the State address in which he talks about this, where he sees the state of Illinois, what we're doing good, what we could be doing better, where the money's being spent, where it needs to be spent. He also, as we learned, prepares the budget and sends it down to the legislature. And the state budget process was once pretty poorly organized everywhere, not just Illinois specific. All but 3 states now use the executive budget, which is what I said. The governor prepares the budget and sends it down to the legislature. So the governor has the power to prepare the state budget and to manage the spending of funds. True, in our case, the legislature can tinker with it and make changes. So the budget process typically works like this. Every agency, say we're talking about the Department of Child and Family Services, DCFS. Let's say we're talking about DCFS. They'll prepare a budget estimate. They will say, all right, Governor Pritzker, with salary costs, administrative costs, how much it costs to bring a child in and place them in foster care and things like that, we estimate we'll need, and again, I'm just pulling this out of my head, there's no basis for this, $5 billion for the next fiscal year to operate. So DCFS, the chairman or the agency head or whatever he's called, will send in that budget to the governor's office. It's reviewed, revised, and then combined into a state budget that the governor presents to the legislature. And DCFS may end up getting over only like $3 billion, or maybe there's excess and they'll get $6 billion. It just really depends on how we're doing that year, how the agency prepared the budget. It's usually an agency interest to overestimate how much they think they'll need, because they're going to end up getting less than what they asked for anyway. And if they ask for this and they need this, they might end up here with a little bit of surplus. So the legislature decides what parts of the budget to approve or expand. And this is a power the Illinois legislature has. They pass revenue measures as needed. And the governor supervises the spending of funds, and he is subject to an independent check of spending practices called a post-audit after all that's done. So, now that you've learned about how state government raises money to pay for services, go back and answer the chapter essential question. How local should government be? And that will be your 5th discussion question for the week. So now we will review. The federal government does not allow states to tax interstate commerce, the sale of food, property, income. Well, we know that they can tax income, the states. We know that they can tax property, the states. We know that they can tax the sale of food. So by process of elimination, the federal government does not allow states to tax interstate commerce. What is the major source of state and local revenue? Well, we've got a chart back here that we can look at. The sales tax. the sales tax is the major source of state and local revenue. All right, so that is it for state and local government financing. Stay tuned for an assignment for this week having to do with the November elections, which I have sadly neglected in this class. So reach out if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. If not, see you next week.